Hello, I'm Jack Poole and this is my showcase of the Unreal Tank game. My tank game is overhead and class based. The first tank I'm going to demonstrate is not one that is intended for gameplay, but rather one that is simply used within architecture. All of the tanks within the game parent, at least in some way, to this tank. Jumping into the game, we can move basically in all directions, and the turret can move independently of the tank. The turret can also fire, and it has a short cooldown denoted by a puff of smoke at the end of the barrel. Once this puff of smoke is released, the tank is ready to fire again. So we can see, we fire, there's a puff of smoke, we fire, there's a puff of smoke, and we can fire again. This tank also has 3 UI elements, a driver, a health bar, and a stun bar. When the tank takes damage, the driver icon will flash a red colour, and the health bar will grow slightly in size, as well as both elements becoming more opaque. The stun bar, showcased above the health bar, will denote how long the tank is CC'd for. We can demonstrate this damage effect by hitting ourselves with a missile. You will also note that a sound effect plays during this damage. Moving on to pickups, we have 3 pickups. The pickups are health, invincibility, and resource gain. The resource gain will have to be showcased with later tanks, but the healing and the invincibility mushroom can be showcased now. The healing pickups are instance editable, and both of these healing pickups restore different amounts. When a tank heals, the driver icon will flash green, and the health bar will grow slightly more opaque and grow in size slightly. Next, we can demonstrate the invincibility mushroom, which turns the tank golden and makes invincibility for a short period of time. That is all to showcase for the basic tank. The next tank to showcase is the sniper class. The sniper class is vastly different to the basic tank. Jumping into gameplay, we can already see 2 new UI elements in play. The first one, the bar below the health, is an energy bar. This is a resource bar for the sniper and charges up over time, providing the tank is dormant. When we start moving with the tank, you can see that the bar stops charging. When this bar reaches its max capacity, a small animation will play. The other UI element to the left of the driver icon is the secondary cooldown, as this tank has a secondary ability, which will be showcased later. This energy is used for 2 purposes. It can be used to buff the damage of a shot, or to provide a small boost to the tank. When we hold the left trigger down and move, the energy bar will drain and our movement speed will increase. As I said, it can also be used as a damage multiplier. The tank has a different fire mode to the basic tank. Rather than firing a shell projectile, it instead fires a beam. This beam pierces through multiple tanks but is blocked by terrain. First we will fire it left and show its max range, and now we will fire it to the right and show that it is indeed blocked by terrain. I will now show that it pierces tanks, and if we wait for it to charge, we can see the damage multiplier in effect. As I said, the tank has a secondary ability. The sniper's secondary ability is to lay down a mine. As you may have seen, there are already mines on the level. I will now showcase it placing a mine. When I place the mine, the bar will reach a 0 state and charge back up before playing animation at max charge. As you can see, the mines have UI elements of themselves, slowly charging up over time, and you can see that not only is there an animation with the UI element, but also the middle material of the mine changes. This tank can also only have 1 mine placed down at a time, and when we place another, the initial one will be destroyed. I will now showcase the damage applied when we move over a mine. That is all to showcase for the energy tank. Before moving on to the next tank, I will briefly show how the resource pickup affects the energy tank. When we pick it up, we will gain a small amount of energy. The next tank I have to showcase is the Junker tank. Like the Sniper tank, this tank also has a resource bar. However, this tank's resource is not energy, but rather ammo. As we fire, the ammo will drain, and at 0 ammo, when we attempt to fire again, the tank will instead slow down and reload. This tank does not have a boost, but rather a passive. After taking 3 hits of damage that are of a significant amount, the tank will gain larger max ammo. You just saw that the current max ammo is 3. You will now take several hits of damage. As you can see, a small upgrade noise and particle effect played. The tank now has 4 max ammo. We can continually upgrade the tank by taking damage. I will now showcase this tank's secondary ability. This will involve using the stun bar UI element. When we press our secondary fire, it will put the secondary ability on cooldown, stun us for a short period of time, and heal us for a small amount. You can see that once the stun bar reached a 0 state, we were able to move and can use our controls again. I will now showcase how the resource gem affects this tank. As you can see, it restored ammo. Resource gem, in fact, I believe stored 2 ammo. Yeah, it restored 2 ammo as it restores half of the max capacity of any tank's resource bar. That is all to showcase for the Junker tank. I will now showcase the Hunter tank. The Hunter tank operates very differently to many other tanks. It does have a resource bar like the energy and ammo tank. This resource is fuel, it simply charges up over time. However, it does start at max capacity, unlike the energy bar. This tank has a flamethrower attached to the front of it, and you can see that when we fire, it enables the flamethrower. And when we run out of fuel, the flamethrower disables itself. The flamethrower can also not be spammed on and off, and cannot be enabled unless the fuel is above a certain threshold. This tank has a boost, in which it ignites itself on fire, taking damage over time, but increasing its movement speed. Its secondary fire is a stun missile, which stuns for longer based on how far it has travelled. We will fire up close here, and you can see it has a small stun, but if we move further away and fire it from this distance, it will stun for longer. The stun missile does not come out of the turret, but rather the front of the tank. The resource gem on this restores a small portion of fuel. That is all to showcase for the Hunter tank. The final and most complex of the tanks is the Scrapper tank, which has an inventory system built into it. Let me just add the player control. So this tank is very speedy and fires a missile similar to both the basic and the ammo tank. However, when this missile impacts an enemy, it will spawn scrap. Scrap is this small glowing artifact that we can see around the tanks. This is another good time to showcase the camera change within the game. Pressing down on the D-pad allows us to change camera and view things from a different angle. This lets us get a clearer view of the scrap. The scrap disappears after a short period of time, so it's important to pick it up before it despawns. This scrap increases the resource bar, and when this resource bar max, it will add a random consumable to the inventory. Sometimes the scrap is not always obtainable, however in movement this will rarely be a problem. As you can see, when our scrap gauge filled, it added a consumable to the top of our inventory. The inventory fills in a clockwise direction, and each of the spaces corresponds to a direction on our facepad. Our top facepad button activates the top one, the bottom facepad button activates the bottom one, and so on. I have added a quick development key to add items to the inventory. All of these items are random. You can see that if we use an item, such as a cooldown ability to the far right, that allows us to cool down our shot quicker, there's now an empty base in that inventory. If we fill that up, it will automatically fill that slot. And we can see we've got the same ability again. I will now use that again. I will now also use the other abilities so we can clearly demonstrate how the inventory fills up. The ability to the left here is a short invincibility buff. And the ability to the bottom increases our tank's health based on its current health. We have 3 slots and they will fill up justly. The bottom slot here is a repair and we can use that. We'll also use the cooldown shot at the top. And now when we fill them spaces up, it will fill the top slot, then the bottom slot. If we wanted to drop our inventory, we can press the right analog stick down and it will clear all of the inventory items. Let me fill the inventory up again. And this time we got 2 mines, which can be laid like this. Obviously these are all consumables, so they only have a one-time use. That is all to showcase in game from the inventory system. However, I will now jump to the blueprint and demonstrate slightly how this tank works. Firstly, let me just showcase how the resource gem works. As you can see, it just gives us a portion of scrap. Scrapper tank has a few notable variables. It has a possible consumables variable containing all the possible consumable icons and their corresponding secondary weapon classes. It contains a dictionary with both the inventory slot's index and its contained class, and then a few variables based on which index of consumable and which inventory slot is selected. When we press one of the face buttons, it selects that inventory slot, and this goes top, right, bottom, left. It sets its secondary weapon class to the corresponding consumable. It activates it using a parent call, and then it updates the icons, as well as the class that inventory contains. This is not a null, but rather a blank consumable created purposely for this system. When we gain enough classes, enough scrap, the inventory tank runs this system. This adds a consumable to the inventory. It splits the struct, chooses a random consumable, sets that consumable, and then it loops through all the inventory slots, checks to find if any are open, and if they are, it updates the icon and adds the corresponding class to that slot.